this
mean,
idea about the community.
I think it sounds great. I think it should be a festival,
Yes.
and I think it should be because I'm doing it in like a month, right? Like a festival in 5 days, where it's both the fair going of the cool and friendly, interesting people, and then there's tons of activities, public facing.
Yeah, no, I know,
Yeah.
because I've been through what they
Education. No, but I mean, I think for this, that would be great, you know, and a collaboration between
Cuando vayas a grabar me avisas para aprenderlo.
whoever, that'd be good. Be international.
would be interesting for you to.
Espérame, me estaba mandando un correo.
Well, I'd be happy to support a collaborative effort,
But
for sure.
maybe, I was also thinking, maybe if there's something already happening.
Okay, I think we're going to get started. Thank you all for coming early on a Saturday morning and for braving the big line out in front. We were hoping to wait a few minutes to see if other people wanted to come in. And if, as they do, they'll just catch up with us where we are. So today we're going to talk about learning to smell in different ways. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Karen Marin. I'm the advisor and contributor to Excensional, which is related to Excense. It's sort of the natural extension of Excense, where we carry on the feeling of the workshops and the discovery of brands and fragrance through editorial and through a website called excensional.com. So in my job in writing about so many different brands and perfumers and creators, it came to my mind that, you know, people don't really learn to smell. You know, it's not something that we're taught. So you think back to, like, what are your earliest memories about smell? How did you learn that something smells good, that something doesn't smell good, or that something is burning? You know, how did you learn that that is the sign of danger? So these are things that came to me, that conversations I had with, I think I've interviewed everyone on this panel, and in those conversations, it was something that was a repeated theme over and over. And so I wanted to bring them together so we could talk about this and see if there's a way that we can affect change ourselves and as collectively as a group. So before we get started, I just want to introduce my panel. So starting on the far end, Ernesto Collado. He is the founder of a brand called Brava Nariz, but he's so much more than that. He is a self-taught botanist. He's a performer. He got great acclaim from a New York Times article, and that's how I came in contact with him. He is involved in many educational projects. He takes people on olfactive walks, which we did one here in Milan last year. It was amazing. And just brings you to understand how much we can learn from plants. And so he has great stories to tell, which he'll be telling a little bit later on today. Next to Ernesto is Saskia Wilson-Brown, who I think you all know. She's the founder of the Art and Olfaction Institute. She's a great proponent for education. She is also a huge supporter of independent perfumery. And yesterday, she announced the finalists for the Art and Olfaction Awards, which will take place in May. She also is hosting a huge event in Los Angeles in May, I think it is, May or June. So that's coming up, and she'll talk a little bit about that, but really a proponent for education and for furthering knowledge in fragrance. Next to her is Eduardo Garcia de Alba. He's the founder and creator of My Scent Journey. Eduardo is an amazing guy. He has such a great, just grassroots understanding of fragrance and a way to communicate it to people so that it really resonates and that they take it and then they apply what he says to then grow their own understanding of fragrance. He's created a website that is pulling together information so that the consumer really can share their thoughts that then go to brands, so that it's like a direct communication between consumer and brand, and this is an amazing development. He's, I think, a YouTube star. He's on Instagram. He has just such a great enthusiasm and a great teacher. And then next to me is Pierre Para. He's a luxury strategist. We worked together for many years in our prior lives before we came into Niche. He has international experience in brand development, turnaround of brands. He worked in fragrance development and digital communication, team building, many, many things. So we're going to get started actually with Pierre, who's going to tell us a practical experience about learning to smell.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Good morning, everyone. So actually, if I have to share my experience, I fell into the world of perfumes a little bit by accident. I just graduated from my business school 20-something years ago. And as I was specialized in marketing and I wanted to work at L'Oréal. And I was recruited by L'Oréal, the luxury division. And by accident, I fell into what we call there the olfaction department, which is a small structure, which was a very small structure created by Karine Lebray, which is now the global head of olfaction for the L'Oréal Group. And the idea, the objective of this department was to create an interface between the brands, the marketing teams that create the stories of the new perfumes, and the house of perfumes, IFF, Givaudan, Firmenich, Robertet, Man. And there was this statement that the two sides had difficulties in communicating. They didn't use the same words. So Karine created this structure, and she hired a marketing guy and some evaluators, and we started, and we were 3, and now it's a team of many more people. And so I had to learn to smell, how to smell, and I didn't know anything about perfumes. I'm not from the southeast of France, I'm from the southwest. So we know about food and wine, but not about perfumes. So I had to learn. And I remember Karine giving me some advice in those days, and she told me to learn how to smell. The sense of smell is like a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger you get. So you have to take every opportunity in your daily life to smell. So when you eat an apple, you smell it before. Take your time to smell, and then you will arrange your olfactive memories into boxes. And we will teach you that your olfactive memories actually are raw ingredients, are the same. And then you will learn how to talk about perfumes. So that's what I did, and she added, next, you didn't say anything in the last meeting. Next time you have to speak during 5 minutes about the perfume, so I was a bit stressed up. But I made it, so I got the training by the House of Perfumes, Givaudan, Firmenich, and I had to overcome my shyness, I guess, honestly. And we managed in this structure to develop the vocabulary. And the more you practice, actually, the more precise the words get. You don't say only it smells nice, it's flowery, it's feminine. No, you start using different words, more accurate. And I must say that it's been for when you begin your career, I think I was quite lucky to start my career with that, because you feel so much empowered when you manage to develop a sense that is underused, actually, because it's a very visual society. and when you feel empowered like that, it's like in a Marvel movie, you know. It's like a power that is asleep and that is asleep and that you discover and well, that was my experience.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that this whole question of vocabulary and also being a little bit shy to express what we think a fragrance is. And what are, you know, when someone says, well, how does it smell? And you often see people sort of look at each other like, well, what is he going to say? What is she going to say? Because I know what I think, but I'm afraid to say what I really think. So this is why we thought it would be interesting to do some experiments with the audience. So actually, Chiara, maybe you can help us. We need the, to have the, oh, are you, oh, great. So we're passing around a blotter right now that Saskia generously has provided from her laboratory. And the description, I'm going to tell you what the description is, and then I'm going to ask if this is something that you think, do you believe this? Is this what you smell? So it's a deep and fragrant, full-blooming jasmine. Okay, does everyone have a blotter? Yes. Okay, so a deep and fragrant, full-blooming jasmine. Oh. How many, just from a show of hands, who, tell me if you agree with this description, a deep and fragrant, full-blooming jasmine. Okay, so just put that one aside, because we're going to come back to it. Now we have a second experiment. So I would like to ask for 3 volunteers from the audience.
Don't be shy.
I know, look at you. You're all going to smell this, but I need 3 volunteers. So perhaps Anne-Laure? And one more person? Oh, okay, great, okay. So, does everyone have the blotter? The second one? Oh, yeah, let's go ahead and pass it out.
Second.
So the 3 volunteers, could you just stand up? Maybe we need the microphone. Well, maybe perhaps because the room is fairly small. I want you to tell us, in your own words, how you would describe this blotter.
The second one or the first one?
The second. Animal and fecal is what Anne-Laure has said. And perhaps...
Fecal, I agree. It's very obvious. Animal.
Okay.
I cannot find more words, sorry.
Okay.
But try to.
Try, yeah.
What color is it, for instance?
Something with like an old leaves, maybe.
It's very earthy. And, you know, we wanted you to smell this because this is exactly the point, is that how do you describe this? And so we've only had 2 words, and yet I think that there are many words that you could use to describe it. And I think that part of it is because there's a discomfort in how you would describe this. Ernesto, looking at you, going to you.
I'm curious about how far we get with the 3 of you.
walk in the countryside, you know, where there's horses or cows, or you know, where you feel this earth and the mix of earth and species, and it's very, to me, it's pleasant. It reminds me of my childhood.
This is also something that reminds me right now, like when you sometimes when you put what is it, the big flower, and you put the nose really close into the flower, like sometimes it's even too hard to smell, you know, like it's very deep, right?
And it could even,
Honey,
Honey.
honey
Honey.
nuts. How
Yeah.
about blackberries? Blackberries, anybody? Les mûres. Blackberries, les mûres chaudes. Like blackberry stew? I don't know.
And I think it's interesting to see like that we do lack the vocabulary. And why do we lack the vocabulary? And how can we develop the vocabulary? And I think part of that is having the experience, and then really, I mean, Anne-Laure, you gave us a visual also that takes us somewhere in our mind. But I can definitely see like walking through a field of where there's a farm with animals, and you know they've go about their day, and things happen during the day, and
And there are
which you can
horses,
see. Like even I'm embarrassed about saying what is actually happening, right? Because I'm thinking I have to editorialize it and make it pretty, but it's very natural and basic. And so why do we have these taboos, and how can we get around it?
Yeah.
Eduardo, do you have a? Oh, here. Give me.
Is it possible to take into what it's used for? Because
This is,
I think the experiment is about breaking the box, and
Right.
it's not. We are moving from what we know to what we might know. So what
Yes.
what I'm gonna say maybe is new, but in my university there was a lot of green fields, and every couple of months they used to get this animal thing
Yeah.
and put it there. So it actually make the green greener. So we know it's fecal, but it's actually used for growing, for fertility of the land. So this might be an extension. Can be right, can be wrong, but because we focus only on what it is, but maybe we can think of what it is used for and then expand.
Certainly.
Yes.
Saskia, do you want to take that one?
well, I don't know anything about manure.
Oh, no, I mean the ingredient,
Oh,
because
sorry,
yeah,
yes, no, I was just joking.
the molecule.
This is a mix of synthetic and natural civet. So it's civet paste from the animal in Somalia, in this case, and then synthetic replacer civet, TM. Yeah. And in perfumery, it's used, you know, not for growing things.
Yeah.
Exactly. You already know. So.
Right.
But for me, but it's interesting also what happened, since we are talking about how we relate with this, let's say, shame, is that when somebody steps out and say, like, for example, you said fecal, then easily everybody agrees. This is the first thing we do. Okay, somebody said something, oh, I'm safe. And if I agree, which there is a huge possibility that we all agree, because in the right moment, I'm searching for a word. In the right moment, somebody says one word, my brain is trying to find a connection between that word and what I'm feeling. Because our brain works constantly.
Yes.
And this is funny because it always works like this, I think. If we would do the exercise, one would say fecal and the other one say, no, sorry, it's urine. No,
Yeah.
It never happens that fast. But then once you go deeper, you find these differences, and then you talk about a flower, you talk about manure more clearly, but then you talk about this farm and animals. And so it's interesting how our first guess always is like very frightened guess, and we hold to whatever can save us. No, and it's a little bit about this what we are talking, how difficult it is, because it's so, the sense of smell is so, the perception is true for everybody. Eh?
And sometimes it's a mind map. You think it's something,
Exactly.
and then talking to someone else, I don't know, I thought it was this because actually it is this other thing.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, and what we were also saying when we were talking as a group is that your perception is true to you, right? So it's no one can say that that's not what it is, because it's how you experience it and how you interpret it, and it's your association to what this smells like. and you should be, you should have the freedom and the confidence to express what you think. And
Exactly.
For example, my first guess, which was immediately, let's say, not frustrated, but castrated by what you said, I thought about illness. It smelled to me when my kids get high fever.
interesting.
For
Same.
example, this is what it came, but then I thought, no, yes, of course it's fecal. And then you immediately erase your first intuition. And then, yeah, the question is why? Yeah, why do we do it? And why it's so difficult, no?
Yeah.
I studied film and writing, and one of the classes was directing the actors. I'm now moving from translating the emotion to a visual to translating the emotion to fragrance. It's quite different, but it's quite the same because you need to in the acting and directing you need to translate the emotion into visual. But visual is something that everyone can see. This is blue, this is red. But when you translate the words to fragrance, then it comes to be subjective. But at the same time, when we were in this class, we were trying hard to make some emotion comes out. And then the mentor said to us, okay, do the opposite. It was a scene from Clockwork Orange where the guy was in the prison and he was checking him. And we were trying to make it funny. It wasn't funny. And then the mentor said, try to make it serious. And we were like, this shouldn't be serious. Just try to make it serious. And when we made it serious, it was extremely funny. So it's like do the opposite concept. And in fragrance, when we are biased by certain things and we want to break this to something that is not cliche, to something creative, then sometimes I think we should do the opposite. And this opposite will put your mind to a neutral state. And this neutral state will try to filter what you went out from many strange things. Because, as you said, we are shy to express. Right. But when you break this shyness, you go to an area where maybe 10 things might be wrong, but then you get to one thing that is right, and then you expand already what you know of vocabulary to one more thing, which is one step ahead. So this is, I think, the right thing to do. Thank you.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And Saskia was saying something that I would like you to try to experiment. She asked, what color did you smell? And sometimes people say, what do you mean color? And I think it's very important to see or try to understand smells or scents as a whole. For example, Ernesto took us to a memory, a very specific memory. You said illness. To me, I heard fecal and I was like, this is more like urine, you know? So I would have said maybe no, not illness, but for me this is like an old guy, maybe a guy in a how you say when you're old and they leave you in a hospital to die, maybe, you know. I didn't really like that. For me, it was a very Bloom memory or something like that. So how does that smells? It doesn't smell. So, but you have to connect that kind of train of thought. And when you try to explain that, also as you said, with every time you do it, you become more fluent. And eventually you will say a lot of things that maybe two guys would say, that's bullshit, you know, but it's the way you are trying to express a smell, which it's very difficult to do. So if you try to do it day by day, even with an apple, what does an apple smells like? And you cannot say like an apple, no. Try to go beyond that. So is it sweet? Is it sour? And then, exactly.
Yes.
And then you will say, oh yeah, green apple, and it smells very different to a red apple. So, but why? The chemistry, I don't know. But if you do that experiment, I think, and it's part of what we're trying to do here.
Can we move on to the next slide?
Yeah, so I think now you should all have the third blotter, okay? So the third blotter, if you smell this one, the description is that this is a childhood memory of banana-flavored candy. So now if you still have it next to you, can you smell the first one and the third one? And do you notice a difference? Because in fact, they are the same. So what's interesting is that this is how words can make something smell differently based on what is told to you. So this also, goes into the power of marketing with fragrance, but also to take it even more just baseline for ourselves, how we can all have a different perception. Because I could say, yeah, I really smell the pineapple, and Pierre may say, no, it's a jasmine. But then we're going to get into this, but it's the whole thing about how that's okay, because we both smell something different. And then when he says, no, I smell this, I can say, oh, you know what, you're right. Now I smell both. And why can't we smell both?
There is, I think, one important thing that probably you all know, but I think it's important to say it, that smells are not real things. Smells don't exist. It only exists when you smell them, when you perceive them. Smells are perceptions, are chemical messages. So then they are all bound to an interpretation. So smell is nothing by itself. It needs somebody to smell it. Once you smell it, it exists. If you don't smell it, it doesn't exist. So, this is important to understand, that there is not a truth with smells. It's a perception thing. And you go like this. Tell us.
Well, it's still nothing, because it's like a compound of molecules, so they're different, so I could say that it's nothing.
But what differentiates an odorous molecule from a normal molecule?
Yes, but I think Ernesto means it becomes concrete when you give a name to it. When you give a word, when you put a word on the smell, and we all put different words. That's why the exercise of communication is so.
It's very
so great.
important.
And that's a pity that we don't learn how to smell in any educational program at school, in France, even at the most creative ones, at least in France. I don't know in your respective countries, but I think it would be very, very useful. I don't know if you have examples, but I think I know you have a great tool also to learn how to smell and to talk about fragrances. It's also, when you learn how to talk, you need to be patient, to listen to the other persons. It's a great exercise, actually, social exercise.
Indeed. And in fact, we talked about that this morning, and the storytelling part of fragrance, and how, we all have associations with smell, we all have perceptions, we all have our cultural background affects how we think about smell. And so I hope it doesn't matter that I'm going to go a little out of order, but I think it's a great time for you to talk, Ernesto, about the school, because we'll get to Saskia, because Saskia is very important as well, what's happening with her. Okay. But I think this is a great time to talk, because it is exactly what happened yesterday.
Yes, it's nice. Yesterday I was invited to go to a class here in Milano. There is this school, but it's called the Leonardo da Vinci School. It's a middle school. The kids were 12 years old. And there is this professor, this teacher, her name is Iliara Tomeni. She just took this chance to create a whole program based in the sense of smell. The curious thing is that she here you have, for example, but I will go to the images later on.
Okay.
The thing is that she took this idea from a walk that she did first in Spain, one of these olfactory walks that we do in Brava Nariz, but then last year we did an olfactory walk here in Milano talking about urban nature, and then she really got the idea and threw a sense. So she built it up all this program where the sense of smell is used as a perception tool, as a tool for discovery, for learning. And what it's, for me, most incredible is the fact that you had to see these kids, these little kids. They all come from immigrant families. Some of them, these structured families, not an easy class. It was, I would dream about a class like this. They were so curious. The way they were speaking about what they were smelling, it was incredible. I think that they were much more creative than we are. They were even inventing words. Because, as you said, most of the words we use to describe a smell come from other senses. We say it's lightful, it's dark, it's soft. No, they were inventing words in Italian. And so it was really nice to see how it worked. But the thing that really excited me the most had to do with this, since it is so difficult to say, okay, I showed them these dry leaves. And of course, one kid said, it's dry, it smells dry. Okay, easy, you see it. And I said, okay, close your eyes, smell it again. First thing, all of them, they said dry. And then one said, no, it's humid. Ah, okay, then it's dry or humid. And everybody agreed, it's both. What I'm trying to say is that they were talking about the sense of smell, even when they were not at all agreeing, they were agreeing in the fact that everything was true. So my point is, through the sense of smell, we are teaching citizens who can discuss from the starting point that there is not one truth. We can agree in something that is completely abstract. You understand what I mean? For me, it goes very deep. They were 12 years old, and they were already agreeing in the fact that there was not one single truth. And I'm talking to kids that are used to sit down on a desk, listen to a teacher, telling them what is truth about history, about politics, about philosophy. Probably with philosophy, it's difficult to talk about truth, no? But, and this for me was mind-blowing. The fact that through the sense of smell, you can teach these little future citizens to discuss. For me, it's the best teaching in democracy that I ever have seen.
They're negotiating,
They were negotiating with
they're sharing,
words
yeah.
about something that was very complicated to determine, you know? And they were so used because they have been the whole year. Can I, the pictures? For example, this is, they took the sense of smell to the chemistry class, so they recreated the vanilla molecule. Another picture. They were making an olfactory map of the school. This was an idea that they worked with Kate McLean. You know that she had worked a lot with the idea of olfactory mapping. So they, next one, okay, they also talked with this, you know her? Yeah. She's a scientist, neurologist, and she talked to them about how it works. Look at this. They were smelling the fence. But the funny thing about smelling the fence is that when they had to explain, they used the word freedom. Opposed to what a fence is. Somebody said, it doesn't smell like freedom. I found it so...
Wow.
Just take this example. It takes a whole class about what is, and then what freedom smells like. You know, it's crazy. With little kids, they can do it. And this is with this woman, this scientist, and the last class. And they made a podcast about the sense of smell. So they had to talk during
Amazing.
hours about the smell. This exercise that Pierre had to do, just talking 5 minutes, they made this podcast where they talk about hours about smells, and they talk about how difficult it is. So what I'm trying to say is that this absolutely isolated project by this incredible woman who is changing the life of these kids, it's done through the sense of smell. And if you think about it, on a school, we are constantly, working on site. We're working with materials when they are very little. Everybody has in the art class all these materials, and they investigate with colors. Why not with smells? Why don't, when they are 5 years old, they have a place there where they have different smells and they talk about. And another great idea that comes from here, they ask the kids always, when they describe a smell, they always make this question: and how does this smell feels to you? Do you feel well? Do you feel bad? Why? It reminds you something from your grandfather and it makes you sad. So then you can also connect, of course, easily to emotions in a school.
And in your philosophical aspect, it also teaches them that we all have different perceptions, and it teaches them respect.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Imagine it's a sensual learning on perspectives. And then you learn that there are as many realities as minds. But they don't tell them. They just prove it.
Yeah.
Well, this is what I just wanted to show.
No, I think, and the thing
And it's
too,
happening here.
It's
in Milan.
happening here, and I think that it's something that we talked to some people, and they said, the teachers don't know how to train on this because they're not trained themselves. But here, it's something where really it's things that we all have. And when we talked about creating an olfactory map of the school, you don't really need anything because it's all there. So you just take your walk around the school from room to room, outside, into the cafeteria, and there's different smells. So you don't need materials. There's no additional expense, really. It's something that can just be done.
And one other thing that I remember. Of course, they were from different origins. Moroccan, there was this girl from Somalia. They smelled each other, and they talked about how different it was. Wow. Can you imagine 12 years old kids talking about racial differences through smell? It's quite a level, eh?
It is.
I think, no. I mean, the thing is that we have so many great stories to tell on this panel. Eduardo, I think this would be a great time for you to tell us about your daughter.
Okay. Well, obviously, I'm a big passion about perfumes, and a year ago, my daughter, was born, and since she was little, we have been exposing her to perfumes, not by chance, but we always work with perfumes. And it was very funny because one day I had an experiment with some essential oils, and I had a blotter, and I remember I put her near her nose, and she was like moving, and when I put her in front of her, she stands still, and she was like, and I talked to my wife, which is here, and I was like, is she smelling? And I was like, no, it cannot be. And after that, we have been doing this kind of exercise, not only with essential oil, also with perfumes. And every time when you do it, she stands still. And now, a year after, we have even discovered things that she likes or not. So sometimes you put it, she stands still, and then but it says like, no, something like that. She doesn't even talk yet. And others, she just stands still smelling. So it's very interesting to find out that, I don't know, I've never, realized that. And for me, you were saying that In France, they don't teach anything about smells. Even in Mexico, I'm from a Montessori school. You supposedly have, you know, everything like very manual, and you know, from when I was a kid, you know, they teach us about anatomy and everything. You go to walks to the forest, but you learn about the kind of pine, the kind of tree, but never about smells. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to do it, and I also think it's a great experiment, not just because you are learning a new sense, but it unveils new ways in which you can elaborate and describe. So if you eventually says, what does lavender smells like? And doing this exercise, like it's green, it's, I don't know, I like it or not, you are helping them when they have to do an essay or something in which you have to elaborate. So it helps, you know, try to communicate and try to put your mind into words, which is very difficult. So, like I said, I have a perfume channel in which we talk about perfumes, and the first challenge was how can I describe how does a perfume smells like? So one exercise I do, and I think it's very easy, is try to find words in which we can relate. So everybody has gone to a field, or everybody has maybe gone to a farm. So if I go to a very specific and very technical smell, we don't convey anything. But if you try to find, you know, common ground and say, this reminds me too, and if you are into perfumes, sometimes you can say, does this remind you to that other perfume? And then you will find these links. So yeah, that's something I've been doing with my kid. Maybe next year I can tell you about the progress. But I hope she can have some more preparation, because just like you, I started smelling just because I like it, but there's nothing you can read about it, like teach you. So everything it's empirical. I don't know.
It's true, and you know, one thing Ernesto and I were talking about this morning is that we're actually, when you start at this level, you're training the future consumer of fragrance. Because, and can you imagine, we didn't have this type of education when we grew up. So if we can start it at a young age, how much further they will be when they get to our age, and how much more their appreciation of fragrance will be. I wanted to also ask Eduardo to talk a little bit about the way he interacts on his channel with his audience, because he has a great way of conveying a message, as he said, in a way that it's a common ground where it's not ethereal, it's not there is magic, but it's not unapproachable. And I think that that's a very important part of understanding fragrance. So can you maybe tell us in a few words, like how you do that with talking about wardrobe and...
Yeah, of course. Well, one thing I always try to do on the channel is, first of all, not everybody that see me is passionate about perfume. So the first thing, you have to make them feel passion. And the first thing I do is tell them that perfumes are like clothes. So you don't always wear the same clothes. So why do you think you should smell the same every day, or the same way you smell like 15 years ago? So once you put them into that perspective, they are like, so what, you are meaning I have to have like 20 perfumes? Well, how many jeans do you have? How many jackets do you have? And why do you have so many jackets? That's something also interesting. If you are always dressing in black, the same clothes, yeah, I think you can use that. But if not, try to look perfumes as a way to express yourself. You won't wear the same perfume to go to the gym as to go to a wedding. So once you start doing that exercise, I think it's something, you know, it's a metaphor for them to try to discover new things, to open up, and to eventually get into the rabbit hole that we are all here and discover perfumes commercial ones, and then you go deeper into niche, and then you become one of us. And I think that's something we could inspire. But I always start with that analogy, and yeah, it clicks something like, okay, I mean, you know, if I'm investing in clothes, why shouldn't I do it in perfume? So, it's just
I think it's really important because it makes it understandable to someone who's maybe a novice, but then someone who's much more experienced in fragrance. And you know, I have to say, I've been wearing black every day, but there's different textures of black, different textures, different shades, different fabrics. So, and different fragrances go with the blacks, but I think that it's a way of communicating, and it's a way of learning how to communicate through fragrance. And in terms of, and that leaves me to my segue to Saskia, because she is such a great proponent on fragrance, independent fragrance, perfumery, and also combining fragrance with experiences. And so at the Art and Olfactory Institute of Art and Olfaction, they do, not only do they have classes, which are for everyone, and some are physical classes and some are online. So even though if you're not in Los Angeles, you can still participate. But there's also art installations. So if you can, tell us a little bit about some of the installations and then maybe about the event that's happening in a few weeks.
Hi, everybody. Installations. So we've been doing this for 12 years, so there's 12 years of installations to draw from. But one that I think is germane to this conversation is actually a film screening we did in LA at one of the biggest theaters in LA called the Cinerama Dome. It's old Hollywood, it's quite beautiful. And we did a film screening, a scented film screening for a film that was actually written for smell called The Scent of Mystery from 1959 with Elizabeth Taylor in an uncredited role because it was a terrible movie. But in the movie, the script was written for scent, and in the movie there's a joke, there's a smell joke where you see on screen somebody drinking coffee and half the audience gets, you know, a coffee essential oil or whatever it is on a strip, and the other half got a sort of a whiskey synthetic chemical. And the point was that you were supposed to see coffee but smell the whiskey and be like, oh, ha, he's drinking whiskey. And sort of to the point of this conversation and to the exercise earlier, the audience that got the whiskey, when we spoke to them after, didn't get the joke because they didn't trust their own intuition and their own senses on it. They saw coffee, they saw half the audience, whatever, and they didn't believe themselves. So that's sort of the core interest that the Institute addresses, which is this idea that scent is universal. I mean, the perfumery as a practice is universal. It's through millennia. Every continent, every culture has a practice with scent that is valid. It's our practice. So it should follow that we should be confident or educated or just confident enough to actually own it and find those words. So I don't know if I went off topic, but that's my answer.
No, and then you know, coming up, you have quite a bit coming at the. What is the specific name? It's the Scent event. So
Scent Week is a 10-day festival of smelling. That's really everything we do is oriented to the public. You know, so it's just going to be very accessible events and talks and happenings around smell in Los Angeles. So, you know, if you're in LA, come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this brings us to our oh, we didn't get to this.
No, this is because the school book of this year was this one, Cercatori di Essenze. And they talked about the book through the year. And it was interesting because this book, as you know, have you read it? It's about this guy who goes and searches for the interesting distance in luxury between the old lady in the Champs-Élysées buying this 300 euro perfume and the guy that works barefoot in the middle of the rain and has nothing to give to their kids. And they also thought about this. But what is luxury and how does it work? So again,
And you know, and we were talking about this morning, and I think what's really interesting, and for me it's very rewarding, is that Dominique Roch, who wrote this book, was here last year, and he presented the book. So what this means is that Aix-en-Provence is actually a catalyst for education, because this teacher came, she went on the walk with Ernesto, she must have seen or somehow heard about this book, and she's actually taken all of this and put it into this class, teaching these children, I mean, they're like young adults at this point, if they're 12. But I think, for me, this is something I really want to share with Silvio. I think he'll be like almost in tears, seriously, because this is what we want to have happen at Aix-en-Provence, is that this is the incubator of ideas that then they go out and they go to a wider range of people that can really benefit from all of it. So to end, I think we wanted to have a little bit of a brainstorm, and what I have up on the screen here is an olfactive map that was created by a collaboration, I think, with IFF and the city of Amsterdam, inspired by the work of Kate McLean, to create this type of way to explore the city and discover the city through smell. And it's something that anyone could bring back to their own city. So in the rest of the presentation, I just had brought together some names of people who have done some very interesting projects, including this artist, Kate McLean, including the Scent Week at the Institute for Art and Olfaction, as well as various authors who are neuroscientists that are promoting the way that we can talk about smell. And I think I have the last one, this lady, Anna Derrico, that those of you over there, you mentioned that you knew her. But I think what we wanted to do, and Ernesto has definitely been a catalyst of this, is like, how can we continue this dialogue? And how can we continue to help promoting the education of smell and learning more about smell? And I'm just looking at Anne-Laure. We have something that we do want to show because it's fantastic, and you should all go next door and discover it if you haven't already. It's the Master Parfum game, which is a game that it's something that anyone at any level can play, can learn, and any age. And so this is something that it's a tool that she's developed, and fantastic. To train, to learn, to something that retailers can use with their employees, children can learn from it, adults can learn from it, but we want to continue the dialogue. And so first of all, I would invite anyone in the audience to contact me directly, and then we'll keep building on this. But maybe we open it to the crowd to see if there's anyone has ideas they'd like to share. Or any questions or comments for the panel? No?
I actually have something to add about the precision of language. You mentioned the imprecision, and actually I'd just like to remind everybody that there is a precise language of scent, and it's the chemical language. So if we know about perfume, and I talked to her about methylcyclopentenolone, and there's a very precise communication that happens. So just a reminder that a lot of the education can be achieved through science. And Anna Derrico is doing a fantastic job with that, yeah. So.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the show.
But what? There is no proposal from anybody? We just close it? No ideas on education. We just walk away as ignorant as we were when we came.
No, everyone's going to go visit Anne-Laure next door and play the game to start. And the dialogue will continue. I think the dialogue will continue. And I think, it could be interesting to bring you all back next year with new ideas and have a new conversation and share more stories. Okay?
Of course.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.